Hi, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where in the world you are. I'm Mike Rothman, General Manager of Techstrong Research, and I am going to be your tour guide today for just a very compelling and timely webinar called The Transformative Power of Generative AI. We're joined by two world-class experts on this topic, Jonathan Steinert from Accenture and Carlos Escapa from AWS, or I guess I should probably use the long term, Amazon Web Services, just in case anybody didn't know what AWS was. And again, I mean, I think that that when we kind of think about of all of the things that we've heard about in the last 6 months, generative AI really has to be at the top of the list. But what do we do with it, right? How does it really impact our day-to-day environment? How can we do our jobs better? What are the different technologies that are going to underlie that? And ultimately, how are you going to apply some of these new capabilities to your day-to-day job efforts? And again, I think everybody has questions like that. So we're going to go into a lot of these different topics today. We are going to really just have a wide-ranging discussion around again, how to best leverage generative AI as you move forward. But with that, enough from me. I'm not really the show here. Let me introduce Carlos and Jonathan. Why don't you guys just, kind of go through a little bit about your background, and then you can jump right into the presentation.
Jonathan?
Absolutely. So hello, everyone. My name is Jonathan Steinert. I am with Accenture. I run our Accenture Amazon Business Group for data and AI. And I am joined with Carlos, and I'll let Carlos introduce himself.
And hello, my name is Carlos Escapa. I'm a practice lead for data and AI at AWS, and I am dedicated to the Accenture partnership.
Great. So why don't we jump right in? I'm not sure, who's going to take lead, but let's roll.
All right. I think I will go ahead and get started. Yesterday, the European Parliament, which is the main legislative branch of the European Union, passed a draft law known as the AI Act, which is basically the first step towards regulating AI outside of China. And to say that AI is perceived as being transformative is probably an understatement these days, and particularly so for generative AI. We are at the point where deep learning has made huge strides in the last 10 years, both from the scientific and engineering points of view. And it has really been in 2022 when two architectures that are known as transformers and stable diffusion achieved a degree of maturity that caused them to become worldwide sensations almost overnight. The transformative power of generative AI is already evident in specific areas, such as how we code and how we educate ourselves and our children. And we are now entering a path of adoption that will see generative AI being used in just about every business process in every vertical. In our presentation today, we are going to be discussing in a little detail what technology trends have brought us together today, and we will explain the why and the what behind generative AI on AWS with Accenture. We will cover an initial set of use cases and accelerators that Accenture and AWS have co-developed to help you implement generative AI, and the constructs that we are making available to our customers to get started. We welcome your questions during the chat, using the chat window during the presentation, and also we will reserve a bit of time at the end for additional questions. Let's get started. All right, so it is an entire coincidence, really, that in Q4 of 2022, the transformer and the stable diffusion architectures reached maturity almost simultaneously. Neither was an overnight success, I can assure you of that. As a matter of fact, transformers have been in the making for 6 years. And it is really the result of the work of a vibrant and dedicated open source community who have collaborated and shared its findings and have accelerated together during the pandemic. This community became better at data collection, and it was really the ability to network thousands of specialized processors with high-speed backbones that gave rise to the first large language models such as GPT-3, OPT, Lambda, and so on. These models have been trained with increasingly large contexts, making the responses increasingly relevant and correct, although still potentially toxic. It was OpenAI's innovation with large-scale human feedback and reinforcement learning that made these models palatable to the general public. Even if imperfect in many ways, these models are useful in entire new ways because we can use natural language suddenly anybody in the world without any technical knowledge, including our parents and grandparents, can use LLMs. And at the same time, this happened actually with a stable diffusion. And thanks to the efforts of the open source community, led out of Munich and the LDM, you could suddenly get put into words something that you could imagine and generated as if by magic, if images or videos. Generative AI would not have happened without a large and committed open source community. And AWS belongs to this community, and we have worked particularly close with PyTorch. Companies such as Meta, Lucky Gold, LG, and startups like AI21, Stability AI, Falcon, Cohere, they have developed generative AI models on AWS. And the models keep getting better and better, and we are hard at work to ensure that our partners have the best environment possible to develop these models. And obviously that our customers can find the most price-performant models on AWS. And we can do this because AWS is single-mindedly focused on the enterprise market. And this is something that makes us different, if you will, from the competition. We have no stake in the consumer search market, and our best hardware and software engineers, our entire fleet of accelerated computing instances is solely available to our enterprise customers, including Amazon. We can scale from hundreds to thousands to tens of thousands of accelerated instances up and down as our customers need them. AWS does not believe in that a single model is going to rule the world. Quite the contrary. Iteration is happening fast, and we see a lot of exciting open source models like Llama, Vicuña, and now we're beginning to see innovative models with commercially permissible licenses like OpenYama and Falcon. We are thrilled that these models become available for AWS customers within days of their release, and that our customers can test them on AWS using tools like SageMaker. Deep learning consumes vast amounts of electricity, and AWS invests a lot in hardware engineering. We have developed chips specifically for deep learning workloads. And this has the advantage that we don't have to worry about existing gaming or graphics-intensive workloads. We have chips that consume less energy, they have a smaller instruction set, and they have lower latency. And this all contributes to attenuate the CO2 footprint of generative AI workloads, which is significant. AWS is on track to power all of its data centers with 100% renewable energy by 2025. And lastly, our generative AI products are designed to be deployed and used with security and compliance in mind. In AWS, customers train and deploy models within their VPC without corporate data ever getting exposed or used by model providers. We believe that the safest way to use generative AI is to bring models to the data and rather than moving data to the models. And let's go ahead and see how these tenets translate into action. We think in AWS about our AI/ML stack as having 3 layers. So let's look at them bottom up. We have a frameworks and infrastructure layer where we provide multiple options for accelerated computing. Some of them are ours, some of them are from our competitors. We also provide images and containers developed specifically for deep learning, and this is for developer engineers who prefer to build their own DL stack. The next layer up is for ML engineers who want to take advantage of the plethora of managed services provided for SageMaker, from data labeling to MLOps at hyperscale and automated model training, retraining, and deployment and governance. And lastly, we have the AI services layer, where application developers can invoke DL-powered services through APIs, such as ASR, automated speech recognition, computer vision, sentiment analysis, and many more. In the past few months, we have introduced, actually last month, we have introduced, I beg your pardon, it was in April, we made an announcement with several new generative AI technologies at every layer of our stack. So once again, going from the bottom up, to Inferentia 2 instances are purpose-built for deep learning inference. They provide high performance and cost efficiency for generative AI models. More about them in just a few minutes. AWS Trainium is the next generation machine learning accelerator purpose-built for deep learning training for 100 billion plus parameter models. These instances deploy up to 16 accelerators, delivering high performance and cost savings and allowing for faster training of natural language processing, computer vision, and recommender models in various applications. SageMaker Jumpstart provides pre-trained open source models for a wide variety of problem types. I will get to that more in the coming slides. And very importantly, we made the release of Amazon Bedrock. It's a new service that is available now in preview that makes foundation models available from leading AI startups and from Amazon via API. Lastly, in the AI services layer as well, we released Amazon Code Whisperer, and this is our first GenAI application in the AI layer. It was released actually in preview in 2022, and it was made generally available last month. With regard to how we think about custom generative AI. Generative AI models are large to extremely large. They are really awkward. They're difficult to manage and deploy and keep in production and require considerable skills to do all that. Capacity planning is difficult, as accelerated instances are obviously very expensive. Latency can also be a problem. So we provide two approaches to deploying generative AI platforms for different personas. Data scientists and engineers can use Amazon Bedrock to deploy generative AI models without needing any knowledge of large language model engineering. All the heavy lifting is taken care of, and Bedrock comes with a curated set of models that can be deployed with just a few clicks. For customers who have LLM engineering skills and prefer much finer control over the data selection, the model training, the deployment process, and the pipelines, SageMaker is the best approach. Amazon GenAI optimized infrastructure can be accessed through either Bedrock or SageMaker, and of course, we use it also directly from Code Whisperer. So let me start there. Let me start by talking a little about Code Whisperer. So Code Whisperer is a coding companion trained on billions of lines of codes that can generate code suggestions ranging from snippets to full functions, and it does it in real time based on comments and existing code. Code Whisperer is not a normal code companion, though. It is designed for the enterprise, and it is designed so from the ground up. And it includes detecting potential sources of bias and vulnerabilities, such as those that are available in the Open Worldwide Application Security Project. Code Whisperer analyzes existing code in the IDE, whether it's generated by Code Whisperer or by the programmer, identifies that problematic code with high accuracy and provides suggestions to mitigate problems. It also provides reference tracking for open source code and automatically annotates the open source project, the repositories, the URL, the reference, and the license information. The professional version of Code Whisperer delivers enterprise features that you would expect, like SSO and administrative features such as metrology and group-wide policies. This is, of course, leaving the code stays within the organization, and none of it is actually used for retraining in the professional edition. I should also mention that there is a free version for anyone that wants to test it, including students. So if you don't use Code Whisperer today, I would encourage you to use it right away. It's available in multiple IDEs, including, of course, VS Code, JetBrains, Jupyter Lab, and what have you. And if you have kids in high school or college, then you can also give them a hand and get them to use Code Whisperer to avoid having to memorize parameters and all of these pesky APIs that they have to learn. All right, now Amazon Bedrock. So Amazon Bedrock is really the easiest way for customers to build and scale generative applications using foundation models. With Bedrock's fully managed serverless experience, Customers can get started very quickly with a range of foundation models that we have curated, and they can do that securely and privately. And all the customization can be done inside of the VPC. With this experience that we provide with Bedrock, customers can find the right FM for the right job. And this is where the partnership with Accenture is particularly important, because Accenture provides these kind of services to help in the selection of the appropriate models depending on the use case. In the case that you may want to use models that are not curated by AWS, we also have the availability of more models from the Jumpstart program in SageMaker, and I will talk about that in a moment. It is possible for customers also to fine-tune Bedrock foundation models by providing a few hundred labeled examples, and it is possible to create an accurate customized model for a specific problem without the burden of collecting very large models of annotated data. So there is both the fine-tuning method or the prompt engineering method of invoking Bedrock. Regarding the models that we curate and that we make available, we are collaborating with AI21 Labs, and their Jurassic models are available in Bedrock. We have also Claude from Anthropic, and we have a Stable Diffusion from Stability AI. As well, we have two models that are contributed by Amazon that are known as Amazon Titan. This is the brand under which we release our foundation models, and they are Titan Text and Titan Embeddings. These are the models that are initially available. In case that you're not familiar with these companies, AI21 Labs, they're based out of Tel Aviv. They are a startup that have raised around $120 million of funding. They have very strong multilingual support for Western European languages of the bat. They're relatively efficient models and very easy to deploy. For conversational AI, we have Claude, and Anthropic is a company that has raised a lot of money. It's about $1.2 billion they have raised with a valuation of $4 billion. They were founded by two ex-employees of OpenAI. They actually provide governance inside of their conversational approach to model creation and development. And then from London, as you mentioned, Anthropic is based in San Francisco, and based in London, we have Stability AI. They have raised about $100 million, and they have funded R&D in Stable Diffusion, and they have their own distribution models that are available in Bedrock. As I mentioned before, if those models are not enough and you want to reach across to the very large ecosystem of model providers available in Amazon, you can do that through SageMaker Jumpstart. Here, the range of models is significantly bigger, but it's still extremely easy to deploy them. We provide a sample code in SageMaker Jumpstart. You can check the type of license, and then with one click, you can either get a notebook to do your own customization, or you can go ahead and test or deploy the models very easily in your VPC and deploy them. As I mentioned, we have about 400 models available in SageMaker Jumpstart. This is, again, a very wide selection, and this is why we have this close partnership with Accenture to ensure that our customers are very well served, and Accenture provides recommendations and curation on the best models for each use case. The approach is similar, whether it's SageMaker or Bedrock. The models are deployed in the customer VPC. The models are basically treated like any other code that is developed by customers, so they can avail themselves of the same deployment techniques, particularly in highly regulated industries. This is particularly important as we don't have to reinvent the wheel, so to speak. Everything that is developed and deployed in the VPC can be deployed with the same security and compliance guidelines as any other application that our customers have on AWS. Moving now to the bottom of our stack, this is the engine room of AI in AWS. This is the set of accelerated instances that we have available, and the ones here that are in squares with broken lines are the ones that we announced in April. We announced the general availability of Inf 2 and training one. But as you can see, we provide also accelerated instances from Intel, from AMD, and from NVIDIA. We believe that the customers want optionality. And also, it is very clear that some models operate better in some chipsets than others. Therefore, having a large choice is something that we consider vital to providing good services to our customers. I would like to note that even these older instances like P2s continue to be used, because in many cases, the customers want to do batch overnight of inferencing, and this happens to be the cheapest way to do it. Therefore, we have Inf2, but we will continue to have Inf1 instance available for the foreseeable future. So this is, again, a case of giving more options to customers to respond to the needs of the specific workloads where they want to deploy them. What's important, I think, to underline with the Trainium and inferential chips is that you get a 40 to 50% price performance improvement relative to other instances available, other GPUs available, and also that the power consumption is also considerably less. Therefore, the CO2 footprint is also significantly lower. The Trainium instances can be networked as many as 20, 30,000 chips can be networked together. We provide a backbone operating at 1.6 terabits per second. Therefore, this is a very highly scalable. When you build foundation models, this really makes a massive difference. When you fine-tune a little bit less, obviously, and it's obviously less so if you're just using prompt engineering when you deploy the models. But for that, we have Inferentia 2. And Inferentia 2, the sweet spot for Inferentia 2 is going to be models that are going to be in tens of billions of parameters when they don't fit in a single instance. And this is what will give a much higher price performance. And as also mentioned, a significantly lower latency than comparable accelerated instances. So we're working on many different use cases. Frankly, every business process out there that uses language is subject to benefiting from the high capability of contextualization available in large language models. As well, any creative business processes that have to do with images or text also can benefit from the use of generative AI. Therefore, we see the application going extremely deep in the economy and extremely wide. And in this regard, we are very happy to be collaborating with Accenture, and I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, John, to tell you about how we're making GenAI possible at companies like yours. Jonathan?
Well, before we jump into that, guys, we did have one question that came in, and Carlos, throughout kind of a lot of your talk, you were kind of alluding to data privacy and data security and a lot of the capabilities that the foundational AWS brings to the table to protect the models and protect other data and IP that customers would move onto Bedrock or into SageMaker. Are there any compliance standards or guidance from any of the organizations that are out there to help us understand what data security should look like in this age of generative AI, or are we just kind of muddling around and it's pretty much data that data's data and we just need to protect it as data would be protected?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And something that I like to remind people is that ethical use of technology is absolutely nothing new or nothing specific to AI. Any technology that is used, whether it is a telephone or whatever tool, it should be used ethically. Okay, so that should always be the case. Now, when you handle data at such large scale, understanding the data becomes a lot more difficult, and therefore you have to use statistical techniques to do that. So yes, the answer is yes. We have tools such as SageMaker Clarify. We don't have time to go into detail that provides significant assistance to detect and mitigate bias. And actually, we also have this functionality available in Code Whisperer. Code Whisperer actually detects also potential use or misuse, if you will, of functions and processes that could actually have a bias.
Great. Okay, great. Thanks. All right, Jonathan, over to you.
All right. Well, now that we've laid the bedrock of what we can do, let's go on to talk about what we're actually doing in action. So with that, one of our very first use cases that we've been looking at is how can we bring down essentially the time it takes to get regulatory compliance documents out into the FDA's hands, so that our life sciences partners who are developing life-saving medications, new vaccinations, can much more easily harvest their research and bring that into the templatized FDA formatting. This is something that takes tens of thousands of hours, and this is something that our generative AI tools are extremely good at doing, understanding the context of our complicated unstructured data sets coming from heavy R&D, and then being able to take those, understand what's going on inside that document, and then being able to create essentially brand new language and inference of what was going on in the complex table, to be able to actually fill out pieces of like what is the medication doing, what's the efficacy, how are these things being put in place. This allows our researchers to spend more time doing critical research. It allows our document writers to do a much more refined job of creating and curating the actual content and reading it and spending time actually breaking it down and making sure that it's more human readable. And it also takes away potential errors where I'm taking and converting a table and converting that to text, or taking text and converting that to tables. These are very important things we do, and this can save millions of dollars. If you think about the total time to market, we are shaving off months, and that is a ton of person time. So it's very important that we're able to be very accurate. We get this through to our document editors and writers, and that way they're spending more time doing critical work and less time doing busy work. We can let our generative AI friend over in the computer do a lot of that heavy lifting, which is something that is, again, creating a better place to work. That's reducing the amount of bias, potentially mitigating any human error that would come into place, and allowing the document writers to do their job of actually editing, modifying, and taking care of it. So with that, this could be applied to any place you're doing regulatory compliance documentation, not just life sciences. This could be done in automotive. This could be done, so if you think about IIHS, they have very specific diagrams for headlights, taillights, safety features and functionality of the car. They have to provide wiring diagrams, things like that. This could be applied directly to those use cases as well. So there's a lot of applications in a lot of different industries where this documentation compliance can really start to accelerate your business into getting speed to market as well as better accuracy. Next, one of the things that we've been doing internally from not only a dog fooding standpoint, but something that we've been bringing to our clients with our AI coding companion. So leveraging Code Whisperer in particular, we've noticed a lot of strengths around bringing a normal developer into being a superhuman developer. This is something where we look at our AI coding companion with Code Whisperer truly offsetting a single programmer to having more of a pair programming style. This is something that's returned, on average 30 or to 40% improvement in coding with hands-on keyboard. So your build time starts to shrink dramatically. The really nice thing about this is something that you can start to bring in at any level. So if you have a junior developer, as long as they understand what the Code Whisperer is doing and they understand how to do prompt engineering, this can greatly augment their skills and make a relatively new programmer equivalent to a very seasoned programmer. And if you can imagine what that does for a senior programmer, this can make them essentially as good as almost a whole team. So this is something that we have been leveraging. We've released several products to the market we're working with quite a few different clients at on premises on their actual deliveries, and we've been seeing quite a bit of uptake and adoption in the market. This is something you can definitely look at as a cost takeout in that build portion. Next, we have one of our customer engagement pieces. This is being used in every industry across any call center. Anytime you have an agent who's assisting a person, you can do this real time or essentially async. So if you think about chat and you look at a chatbot type scenario, you could have a live agent monitoring the chatbot, approving, denying responses. You can have the agent assist. So if you think about banking, you need to look up somebody's account history and you need to pull all these different pieces of information together around fraud. The agent could likely have all of that information pre-pulled up, pre-populated based on the phone number of the person and the voice print that they gave to the automated agent coming in, so the agent can better assist on a first-time call resolution. This also goes into other analytics where we can start to look at call summary for training. We can take recorded instances, feed them into different AWS services to get the text, speech to text, or we can do speech directly into some of our large language models, get sentiment analysis out of it, and then post-call summarization for what could we do better, what went really well, and also for quantitative scoring of certain analysts. So with that, we have one last piece, which is the culmination of all this. How do we assist our employees? How do we take and again augment any employee in the company? How do we give them essentially that ability to reach into all of our data and the internet data? And what can we do with that? So if you think about simple chatbots today, you talk to HR and you have a simple HR policy question. Right now, that chatbot just spits back, what's the policy? You can't ask it to summarize it or how it's going to affect me, or if I have questions about it. You have to talk to an actual person. These new, essentially the new bots that we're looking to bring out and the new interactive features will allow us to give a human touch to this, where we'll get information back about what's the summary of this policy. And what if I'm in this situation? And it can start to pull in information from outside of just the HR world. So it can look at your finance. You could look at, how do I get a quarterly report for, this set of users against this set of clients? And I want to be able to see that in a graphical format. That's something that we're trying to bring to everyone, so that the ubiquity of data within the enterprise is right at your fingertips. So this is really new and exciting. These things are groundbreaking, and we're super excited to bring those to the market. So some of the other things that we're also looking at is how we can touch every single industry across all of these different departments, HR, tech, back office, R&D, and how do we bring those to use cases where we can bring our clients from essentially where they are today into that augmented reality where we can make one person so much more efficient and give them the freedom to not be doing so much busy work. So with that.
So Jonathan, before we kind of move into, kind of the next area, there was a question. We got a bunch of questions that came in, so we'll have plenty to talk about once we're done with that. But one that I think is pretty pertinent there. So for a lot of these examples and a lot of these use cases that you just presented, to what degree are they available? I mean, can AWS, Accenture, help a customer build one of these customer engagement models, or an employee assist motion, right now? Is there code that's available for this? So, how do folks feel and touch this if it is something that's really a compelling situation for them?
Yeah, so that's actually one of the next topics here is how do we get engaged? To answer the question, as well as kind of introduce into the how do we get to start, every single one of the use cases that we've presented has an accelerator behind it. So we already have accelerator code or near product ready type code that we can bring to different clients, different environments. Now, each individual use case will likely require some modification, just because the nature of each individual business is going to require some tweaking. So I won't say that there's any, here's the silver bullet for this product in this market, but we have an accelerator that's going to shorten the time to bring that to your to that particular client. And typically, how we do this is with essentially this model right here. So when we talk about what are we doing to explore, so how are we actually identifying use cases within the company? How are we looking for generative AI and working backwards towards getting a use case that's going to really show that North Star, like I need to do these things in order to be better at what we're doing, and how we can help prioritize those, build those use cases out so that they're not only the North Star, but they're tangible, actionable, and buildable. And how do we show the business what are we going to do from an investment, and what are we going to do from a cost return? So how are we looking at these business cases starting to pay back? And then we move into really the experimental phase. So how do we create a launchpad opportunity, which that's a essentially Accenture Amazon funded opportunity for a client to start to look at rapid prototyping. Is this going to work for me? Is it not going to work for me? It's that fail fast, very low friction, typically speaking, no cost to the client. There is some cost in terms of the client doesn't have to be engaged during these events, but you're not paying for Accenture or Amazon resources necessarily to actually create this rapid prototyping. Then we're going to assess whether or not we can leverage these as a, is the business ready for it? Is the technology ready for it? Is the change management ready for it? So we can start to poke and prod at how we're going to actually start to do our execution. So how do we bring this to a reference architecture for production readiness? How do we have the information that we need? So if we're trying to pull from different sources, or we have an expanded use case after the experimentation phase, how do we bring that to the, essentially a roadmap? How do we put the SOW together? How do we deliver this together? And how do we get this into essentially our client's world? So with that, how do we really start to do this? I mean, again, we've touched on these pieces. This is a really unique opportunity where we haven't seen essentially exponential growth like this in the market since the 60s. This is something that's an absolute new frontier. We have a little over 1,500 experts within Accenture that can help guide with deep industry knowledge. We can start to shape how the business models start to really move forward, and how we start to really take these strategic views and outcomes and bring that technology and architecture to our clients so that we deliver that kind of optimization that we're looking for. Or we want to make sure that we're creating an impact. So how is this impacting everybody's life? How is this making things better? How are we reducing the friction to accessing data? How are we creating faster innovation cycles? And how are we truly moving the needle in the market? So these are truly transformational pieces that can be done exceptionally quickly, or they can take a little bit longer depending on how we go about that interaction model. So with that, some of the things that we've already done. We are, as AABG, or the Accenture Amazon Business Group, we are exceptionally biased. We believe that AWS is the correct place to start building these in this open environment that allows us the flexibility to not only leverage generative AI as kind of the the cream on the cake here, but as an open platform to provide a builder's paradise, which allows you to leverage hundreds of different AWS services. And we start to bring these in, and we look at how many different proof of concepts. We're nearing 200 different generative AI proof of concepts and proof of values, and we're moving these things forward very quickly. We're looking cross-industry to look at analytics and how we can bring more AI and ML into the data analytics. How can we identify potential cases of PII, PHI, or other types of data that's sensitive that needs to be protected better than it is today. We're starting to learn that you have opportunity, how do you balance that opportunity with security? And we're looking at how is your attack plane. So when you talk about all these different data sources, how is that attack plane being handled? With AWS, we have all sorts of different tools with Control Tower and Macy, bringing together all the security pieces, identifying all those secure pieces of data, being able to, again, put the proper overhead in place. So that brings us into this very nice secure place. And with that, one of the things that I can say, why Accenture? We've been working on this essentially in the ecosystem now since the dawn of Azure with OpenAI. We've been working on this with GCP. We've been really focusing on AWS in the last 3 or 4 years with SageMaker. And as generative AI really comes apart, we're working with AWS directly to start to really shape the market, bringing in knowledge from all of these other different clouds, all these other different tool sets, working with our Anthropic partner, working with AI21 Lab. We really are, putting huge investment dollars in with a nearly $3 billion investment over the next 3 years to drive AI into the next generation. So with that, thank you very much for your attention. I'll pass this back over to Mike, and he can ask questions.
Yeah, we do have a number of questions that have come in. So, of course, there is Carlos and Jonathan's contact information if you wanted to touch base with them. We had a couple that were answered kind of in the QA, but I'm not sure everybody has access to that. So let's just kind of go through real quick some of the ones that Carlos, you already hit on. So does the Inf2 chip, or I forget what it's called, Inferentia, is that right? Inferentia?
That's right.
All right. How about that? So does Inferentia 2 chip support distributed inference? So I assume the answer is yes, but if you wanted to expand on that a little bit, that would be great.
Categorically, yes. And I put a hyperlink in the chat for those who want to get more information about it. There's a blog with more detail. And as I should mention, we use it internally. Amazon Search, for instance, uses distributed inference at very large scale. ByteDance also uses this technology. We have a number of use cases that are in the public domain.
Awesome. Well, one of the things there was a little confusion about, but just in terms of aerospace and defense, we saw a lot of different verticals that were treated, mostly commercial side. I think on one of the examples you just showed, Jonathan, on the last slide, that there was a government agency that had been doing a proof of concept type of initiative. So you guys are working with, I'd say that's where data sensitivity becomes really important. Is it something that you can work on GovCloud, or is there again? So how does that work if you are in kind of one of these heavily regulated industries?
Yeah. So from I'm going to stumble here for a second, but when we start looking at our FedRAMP approved, highly secure type infrastructure and highly regulated infrastructure, there are absolutely ways to go about this. Now, you're probably not going to be leveraging Bedrock and Titan as of tomorrow, but you're likely to be using SageMaker Jumpstart models, there's very specific security parameters, security testing, potentially like leveraging Black Duck and other types of tools where we're not leveraging just one code scan, we're leveraging multiple different code scans. And we're also creating highly regulated documentation that goes around those pieces. So we just presented in London, and I'm sure Carlos got a chance to see some of this with our public works department in the UK. We're doing essentially generative AI around benefits administration. So that's something that is a huge piece of government work that is being done within a secure cloud environment.
Great. So, Carlos, anything to add onto that? I think Jonathan did.
Just a little detail. There's many applications that use confidential data. So imagine, for instance, having to scan passports. It's very difficult to get data that has PII content. So you can use generative AI to generate the test data. And this is what allowed us to go very fast in the development and deployment of the application. The welfare benefits program in the UK called the Department of Work and Pensions, and that is being deployed. Actually, this week it is getting deployed.
All right, that's cool. One last one, and just to clarify, because there was a whole bunch of I started to get the chip names wrong and different model names. So let's just kind of make sure, Carlos, before we get everybody off to the rest of their day. What are the different types of generative AI models that are available on AWS? Are there limitations at this point? Are there things that folks need to know in terms of different use cases or business uses of generative AI on AWS at this point?
Yes, there are a lot, and every day or two there is a new one being made available. Frankly, the pace of innovation has been absolutely unrelenting. And for those of you who are interested in the subject, pretty much since Alpaca was released by Stanford back in the middle of March, it was a technique called low rank adaptation, LoRa, that has actually generated this capability of iterating extremely fast. And then the Red Pajama project in the United States that created an extremely large corpus of open source data for generative AI model training specifically. So it's been these two phenomena, if you will, that have prompted a lot of groups to development at very high speed. And this has resulted in many different products: Mosaic ML, Stable ML, and just a couple of weeks ago, Falcon, for instance. This was actually developed out of Abu Dhabi. And all of these models that are coming out now are actually permissible licenses. The Alpaca, Vicuña, Koala models were only for research purposes, but now all of these models are becoming available on Apache 2.0 licensing. So all of these actually are available through our model hubs and are available in SageMaker basically within days of them becoming available.
All right, so that is not the limitation, right? Your infrastructure is not going to be the limitation. It's probably your ability to figure out what to do with these things. And that's where, again, a lot of these accelerators and kickstarts and specific use cases and proof of value types of environments, really come into play.
That's right. There was a question actually in the chat about MLOps and whether MLOps is different for generative AI. The answer is yes. The answer is yes. Latency tends to be a very big concern. And so doing the capacity planning correctly is really important. Model retraining is also very important. So this is part of the governance aspects. And retraining is not easy when the models are so large. And then legislation is coming, and we have to get ready for it. We have to industrialize these models with a lot of auditing capabilities behind it. in China, for instance, companies that develop foundation models have to keep the pre-training data. It has to be made available for inspection if authorities require it. The European Union legislation, the draft legislation, has not gone quite so far, but they're asking for similar, like summarized information about what data is being used to train generative AI models. Therefore, we need to make sure that we put very robust governance capabilities from day one when we get ready to deploy these models in production.
Great. All right. So that's about all the time we have for questions now. So I want to thank Carlos and Jonathan for spending a little bit of time with us this morning. Really helped to illuminate really a lot of the possibilities around generative AI, a process, and obviously an infrastructure that is there to help kickstart the effort and make sure that, you know, you're not spending more time buying a whole bunch of stuff, that you can just get moving, you know, both with people and process and code, as well as, you know, kind of infrastructure that's really been optimized for this type of environment. So thanks, guys, for your participation. Certainly want to send a shout out to our pals at Accenture and AWS for holding this learning experience today. I think hopefully it was pretty valuable. The recording will be available. So for any of you that wanted to go back and reconsult what we were talking about here, that will be available for you. And as we had promised, we are giving away $25 Amazon gift cards. So we have the winners here: David C., Lito M., Natisha S., and Rami A. So if you are any one of those individuals, expect to get an email from us that gives you information on how to collect your $25 gift card. So with that, I think we are done. Again, I want to thank Carlos and Jonathan. Their contact information is right there. And have a great rest of your day. Really appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Mike.